Hello, I'm Steve Hermitage, and in this video we'll take a look at something quite fundamental to photography, and that's, well, light. The nature of light that's used to illuminate your subjects can really affect the look and the feel of the final image. Now, this light source next to me is known as a hard light source, and it produces pretty well defined shadows. Other light sources though are far more diffused, and they're known as soft light. In fact, many images produced in the studio of portraits use soft lighting. That produces far more flattering images where the shadows are minimised. Now, we've all taken images outside on a bright sunny day, and we've all taken them on a dull overcast day, and you've probably noticed a difference in the crispness of the shadows. Now, this image was taken down on the southwest coast of England in Devon, and it's one of a seagull. Now, there wasn't a cloud in the sky on the day. I used ISO 400, it was f6.3 at 1/800th of a second to freeze the motion of the seagull as it landed on the sand. And you can see there's a pretty well-defined shadow. Compare that to this image that was taken on a far cloudier day, and there's very little shadow detail. The image of these three seagulls poised precariously on a rock was taken also at ISO 400 at f8 on 1/320th of a second. Now, there isn't that great deal of difference between the exposure of the two images, but the amount of shadow detail is very different. Now, whether the light is hard or whether the light is soft depends on one thing, and that's the relative size of the light source to the subject. Now, before we go any further, let's define something called contrast. Contrast is the relative difference between the light and dark areas in an image. One with very high contrast contains dominating light and dark tones, and in low contrast images the midtones will dominate, and there'll be very few extremes of light and dark. So let's put this all together then. Hard light comes from pretty small light sources compared with the subject, and will cast shadows, and the images tend to have pretty high contrast. Now, when it's a bright sunny day with no cloud, the sun is very large, but also the sun is a long way away from the subject, so effectively that sun is a small source of light, and that's where you tend to get crisp shadows on a nice sunny day. Soft light, on the other hand, tends to come from very large light sources compared with the subject, and that light tends to fall around the subject, filling in the shadows, and those images have lower contrast. Now, outside, when there's loads of clouds in the sky, the sun, the very small pinpoint of sun, will get diffused by the clouds, and that's a much larger light source compared with the subject, and that's why you get very few shadows on a cloudy day. Now, let's take a hint from nature then in the studio environment and see if we can create an image with quite well defined shadows. Now, what we're going to do first of all is take this 500-watt bulb, and it's actually quite hot, sat next to me, and we're going to see what happens when we light this toy elephant. Now, I've got the light here, it's falling on the subject, and we're going to take a closer look at the shadow that's being produced. This is quite a hard type of lighting. You'll see that there's a primary shadow or umbra where the light source is completely obscured by the subject. But there's also an area of softer shadow, and that's called the penumbra. It comes from the Latin almost shadow, and the penumbra, you can see, is larger than the umbra, and that's where some but not all of the light is obscured by the object. Now, although the umbra is completely dark, the penumbra is not. It gets much lighter, and you can see it kind of fades to almost nothing at the outer edges. What I'm going to do now is modify the size of the light source with this umbrella, and we'll see what that does to the shadow. So here we go. Let's take the umbrella into the light just here. There we go. And let's have a look and see what happens to the shadow. Okay, so now we've kept the 500 what light in exactly the same place, and we've added the umbrella. And what the umbrella is doing is diffusing the light, and it's made the light source much larger in comparison with the subject. So you can see that the shadows now soften as that light falls all around the subject. So what if we want to make an image in the studio that has a very well-defined hard-edged shadow and avoid that penumbra shadow, the much softer one that kind of goes around the edge? Now, according to everything that we've talked about in this video, what we'd have to do is to move our light source much further away so the light was smaller in comparison with the size of the subject. But we've got to remember a really important rule of light, and that is the inverse square law. Now, the inverse square law says that the intensity of light coming from a point light source is inversely proportional to the square of the distance from the source. But what does that mean in English? Well, the simple thing to remember is that light falls off rapidly as the distance between the light and the subject increases. Now, that in any one given time period, a subject twice as far away receives only 1/4 of the light. So if we move the light source further away, we would have to make that light source much brighter to kind of get the same amount of light on the subject. An alternative is just to make the light source smaller at the same sort of distance. I'm going to do that using a torch. Now, the result here I'm going to show you is actually really great. It just proves that if you know about lighting, you don't need really expensive lighting equipment to produce great images in the studio. So let's give our small torch light source a go. I'm going to switch this light off and we'll switch this one on, and let's have a look at the shadow. So put this light back on again just to show you that the angle of light that is used will cast very different types of shadow in the final image, and that can be used quite creatively in the final shots. Here are some images that I've taken, and good luck with your creative hard and soft lighting images. Take a look at something rather fundamental to photography, and that's light. Now what? Light. I'm right next to a very, very hot one. I'm getting all hot and bothered. Hello, I'm Steve Hermitage, and in this video we'll take a look at something rather fundamental as hard light. Other light sources are more diffused and produce very little in the way of shadows, and that type of light is... What? Banana. Hello, I'm... No, don't Frank sat there.
What is light?
Light is this very hot thing sat right beside me.
Would you like to pop your face with me?
Yes, I think I would. Right, don't say anything, here I go again. Hi, I'm Steve Hermitage, and in this video we'll take a look at something rather fundamental to photography, and that's, well, light. The nature of... Shush, I can hear you out there. Hi, I'm Steve Hermitage, and in this video we'll take a look at something rather fundamental to photography. Stop it! Right. Hello, I'm Steve Hermitage, and in this video we'll take a look at something quite fundamental to photography, and that's, well, light. Now, the nature of... Now, what? Go away! Now, one thing... Shush! Go! Now, shh. Now, what? You're putting me off. Now, one thing to remember is. Okay, please, and then I can finish, and then I'm done. Okay. Okay, so we put this like. Good luck with your creative, hard and soft lighting images.